Is packing lunch from home the better option? A lot of families seem to think so. But let's take a closer look at what really ends up in lunchboxes and on cafeteria trays.
Welcome to School Food for Thought, the official podcast of the School Nutrition Association. In this special season, we're diving into the truth behind school meals, looking at some of the biggest myths out there and setting the record straight.
This episode is all about school meals versus packed lunches, but not as a competition, as a conversation. We're talking nutrition, convenience, and what kids are actually eating. And if you're feeling guilty about not packing lunch every day, this episode's specially for you. Joining me today are Alexandra Turnbull, a registered dietitian and the face behind the Family Nutritionist; Nicole Milia, Director of Food Services for Norristown Area Schools in Pennsylvania; and Michael Gasper, Director of Nutrition Services for the School District of Holmen in Wisconsin. Let's dive in and unpack what really matters at lunchtime. There's a lot that's said about school lunches, packed lunches, and what's served in schools. And this is not about a competition. It's about some conversations and some enlightened comments. So, Nicole, let me start with you. What do you think fuels the assumption that packed home lunches are always better than what's served in schools?
I think it comes from a concept of moms making it or the parents making it, right? I used to have a food manager of my middle school who said, "This is my house." And I will argue that school food service professionals, cafeteria staff are moms, and nobody mothers better than a cafeteria worker. They mother each other, they mother their staff, they mother the teachers, they especially mother those kids. So they serve only what they would serve to their kids, and they are so proud of what they serve to those kids. I also would say because school meals are, I'm a registered dietitian. You're seeing registered dietitians in schools now. We are making menus tailored to students to ensure that they're meeting the nutritional standards that they need to grow and learn and thrive. So I think school meals aren't what they used to be, they're not the meals of the 80s and the 90s. They are definitely the meals of 2020, 2025 now. We're following trends and we are doing all the things to make sure that our students are having the best cafeteria experience they can.
Yeah, because the kids today are the kids of 2025, are the Gen Alphas and, the Gen Zs and the social media kids. So speaking of social media, Alex,
Yes.
what are some of the common gaps you see in home packed meals from a nutrition perspective?
Yeah. So as a former school food service dietitian, I have seen lots of lunches packed from home and got to see what was in the cafeteria, what we were serving. So I have a pretty good idea of, comparison. And of course, it will depend on the area you're in, the school, and the individual lunchbox in that family, right? Because like what you said, I think when it comes to perception, it's our own perception, or parents have their own idea of what healthy is. So they're packing what they think is healthy.
Yes.
But that's not what our standardized nutrition guidelines might qualify as. But what I see maybe missing in lunch boxes as someone who packs my own daughter's lunch is oftentimes like vegetables, right? We might not think our kids are going to eat a lot of them, so maybe we just don't include them because we don't want to waste them. There's oftentimes not as many whole grains, which we know come in school meals, right? And then sometimes there might not even be as much protein, because from my community of parents, I often hear that they struggle with protein ideas that aren't just lunch meat, so and they're oftentimes have to be cold. So the variety also tends to not be there as much either. Whereas you can get hot lunch with school lunch. So
Yeah, I think it's from a mom perspective, I think it's very limiting. And
it is.
And I worry because, it's lunch meat. And, like every day it's okay if you have it every once in a while, but really that's all you're eating. And then I see Michael's food because he posts his food on social media and I'm like, why is my kid not eating that? So Michael, what are some of the biggest misconceptions about processed food in school meals versus home, what's actually served, right?
I think the biggest misconception is that everything's coming out of a box.
Right.
The other misconception is that if it's processed, it's bad.
Yes, let's
What
unpack that.
people don't realize is that any food that's cut into, if you take a cucumber and you cut it, it's processed.
Yep.
So being processed in and of itself does not mean it's bad. There are plenty of products out there that everyone uses in their kitchens that are very minimally processed, very clean label products that we do use. But in addition to that, I think the other misconception is schools, again, only use box. We use fresh ground beef. We make all of our own meatballs, taco meat. I mean, I could go on and on about the different things that we make from scratch. And more schools are going that direction. And people don't realize it. They assume it's your mother and father's lunch from 20 years ago.
When
And
you're
it's-
used to packing lunches,
Exactly.
you don't really take the opportunity to see what is available. You just have these assumptions in your
Exactly.
head. So
You're going right into my questions. What are some of the ingredients that parents assume that they would never find in a school cafeteria, in a school lunch, and they're there? We just don't know about it.
oh gosh, I mean, where do we start? Fruits and vegetables. Not just canned, right? There's a lot of fresh and frozen, which frozen is just as great as fresh a lot of times. But I mean, we just came from our food show, our national food show here. So, my kids are going to have the opportunity to try pupusas. They're going to be getting braised cabbage. They're going to get fresh salsa. They're going to get chicken tikka masala. They're going to get chicken with gochujang sauce. That's not what I think people think of when they think of school lunch especially when they grew up in the 80s and the 90s. Like, that is what is now being served on a regular basis.
Well, I think parents don't realize that what you serve in K-12 is not what you get at the grocery store either. So there's less sodium, less saturated fat, less added sugar, which we're going to have less of too. So I think they don't realize some of the things that aren't in our foods either.
Well, the meals we serve are nutritionally balanced, and we have to have our menu certified. So, I mean, oftentimes I will see things in lunch boxes that, quite frankly, are horrifying. That a kid's actually eating a little plastic box with different pieces of lunch meat and crackers. Or, if you want to talk processed food, it doesn't get more processed than that. So, I think we have to break through that misconception of what is processed and what is actually bad process versus good process.
And I think the other thing that people don't necessarily realize, and this kind of falls on us, right? Because we might not be advertising the fact, I have 2 certified chefs
That's
working for me. I'm a registered dietitian.
Right.
There's a lot of professional people who are working behind
Not
the
just
scenes
lunch
in
ladies
the
anymore.
cafeteria.
The stereotypical.
It's not just your standard lunch ladies. These are professionals that experience food safety training. They're getting 10 hours of professional development a year. Like, these are people who are running the largest restaurant in town.
We
So
talk
I
about
think-
that all the time. And also, school food is not boring. I mean, I see some of the stuff that our members, like Michael, is like, I'm always teasing him whenever I see stuff on social media. I'm like, you live a little bit too far. Otherwise, I would join him for lunch. But I think a big misconception is that it's boring. It's the same thing. But as our kids get more sophisticated, be because of social media or their own interactions, right? Our communities are much more multicultural than they were in the 80s and 90s. So these kids learn to expect something.
Well, and kids are willing to try it nowadays. I mean, 10 years ago, spicy food was not something that was that big of a deal. And today, it has to be spicy or they won't eat it.
100%.
And so you have to get into a lot of these ethnic foods that, especially in a city like mine in Holman, which is 10,000 people in the middle of Dairyland, they haven't been exposed to a lot of things. So when we do these things, they're excited to try new things and they get in line and we never miss anymore. I've
heard from a lot of parents how school meals, particularly lunch, have allowed their child to actually try new foods that they wouldn't at home, not only because they're with their peers, but just a different environment. And it's things they wouldn't necessarily get at home. And so that's, I think,
So valuable.
About 15 years ago, we started roasting Brussels sprouts. We were probably one of the first schools in the nation to start roasting Brussels sprouts. And we had parents calling us like, what did you do to my child? And you're like, wait a minute, what? And they tell you, well, how do you do this? And they like Brussels sprouts, and they were blown away by that. So
But I'm pretty sure it's not the boiled stuff that we were
No,
eating
right,
in the
right,
80s,
right.
right?
exactly.
Because Brussels sprouts, my husband and I talk about it. We love it now because it's so crispy and everything. And he was like, I don't remember it being like this when I was a kid. And I was like, I think it was
Just
the
like
way.
school lunch is
Yeah,
pretty
no,
much
like,
the same, yes.
exactly. And as working parents, right? Because we talk a lot about school meals and for all, and we're always talking about the income issue. But sometimes it's not the income issue only, is the perception, right? And you have the parent who is quite busy and might have multiple children or might leave home before the kid and is very limited in what they can offer the child unless they, like my child, insists on eating the same sandwich every day, which breaks my heart. So, like, school meals are an option. And why is it so overlooked, you think?
So I actually asked my audience. I said, "Why?
That's right.
If you choose not to eat, if you pack home lunch, why do you pack home lunch?" And so the options were picky eater, convenience, or nutrition. And like it was like 70% of it was picky eating, and then I think it was like 30% was nutrition. So people do have concerns of that perception of nutrition. But then I also got an influx of allergies too was a big concern. So I think there's we have to respect why parents may choose not to, but we can also try to help them understand and learn what it has to offer.
Yeah, and I don't think it has to be all or nothing, right? It's you got 5 days in a week, and you can
Go
pack,
through the menu and pick out some.
and that's kind of like what we tend to do, and we sit with my kid, and he's like, oh, I love this one, I got to do this, and then every once in a while he was like, yeah. When I got to the line today, my favorite thing was not there anymore. I had to do it. Yeah. And I had my husband was like, why did you eat? I think it was yogurt and something. Why'd you eat that, Gabriel? He was like, well, because I was really going for the chicken, whatever he wanted to eat. And I didn't have it anymore. So I was, I had a big line behind me and I just picked whatever.
I will say too, I am a parent of a very picky eater. And I take a great deal of comfort in knowing that my child's going to school and getting school lunch because I know at the bare minimum, she'll drink the milk.
Right.
So if she'll try things and she just will take a couple bites of things and that's about it. But I know she will always eat the fruit. She will always eat the vegetable and she will always drink the milk. And that for me, I'm like, that gets her through the day. I know she's getting some nutrition and that is so important. And I think when we talk about, I think the other reason that parents often, if you're in a district where you're paying for lunch, sometimes they think it's cheaper to pack lunches versus buying lunch. And we're just not seeing that anymore. School lunch really is the best deal. When you look at, we've gone out and compared, if you're from the Northeast, Wawa is a big deal.
Yep.
We've compared the pricing at Wawa, what you get, and then what you get at school. And you get the fruit, the vegetable, the sandwich, and the milk. And at Wawa, you just get the sandwich for the same price and for more most often. So I think that's a big part of why, one of the misconceptions that parents have.
But the reality is most school lunches, especially K5, K6, it's going to be $3 or less, $3.25 or less. You can't buy anything anymore for $3.
Can't even buy a coffee for that.
Oh, that's like $6.50, right?
Coffee at Starbucks. But and the other thing too, I think talked about the busy parents and the variety, right? And what would you tell a parent who thinks that the kid's eating the same mystery meat or whatever they might have seen in the 80s when it comes to balancing the tray, to all the nutritions that are there and all the food groups that are there? What would you tell that parent?
I would tell them they need to first off, go to the school and visit, have lunch with your kid, go through and see the salad bar you didn't know was there and see all the great fruits and vegetables that are offered every day. There's no reason for anyone to ever go hungry when you get 5 components to a meal. It's such good, fresh, creative entrees. Most schools have multiple entrees for the kids to pick from. So if you don't like A or B. There's usually a C that you can choose from. It just, again, like you said earlier, it's not the lunch from the 1980s. It is so much more now. We like to use a hashtag with our social media that says restaurant quality food at school.
Yeah.
And leave your lunchbox at home was the other one we like to use. But those are both true in what not just my program, but programs across the nation are doing innovative stuff. So get out there and visit those schools, see what they have.
Yep. Yeah. And leave your lunchbox at home because you can't, right? Because here the food's going to be as nutritious and as delicious. Because I think there's a big misconception is if it's one thing, it cannot be the other, right? It doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. It is nutritious. It doesn't taste that great. If it tastes good, can't be good for you. So,
And I also think parents don't understand that participation, your child participating in the program, is beneficial for your school, like in the program, in the funding, and all of that.
so let's talk more about that.
Well, that's a good topic. I think too. Yeah. I mean, it's really important that they know that, and they don't really think that. They need a difference if they don't choose home lunch. School lunch.
There's a misconception that, if my child in Pennsylvania, we have universal free breakfast.
Same in Minnesota.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's a misconception where they say like, oh, well, I don't want to take anything away from
Yes.
There's
There's
plenty of food. Yeah, there's plenty of food. We're never going to run out of food. Don't worry.
You're
There's
actually
plenty
helping
for
us.
everybody.
You're helping us by
Exactly. Because now we're providing jobs for people in the community. We're ensuring healthy nutrition outcomes for your child later on in life. So there's just these huge benefits to
And there's a partnership too, right? Because there's this incentive, the farm to school, and you're not, you're getting the farms in your community, right? And this is massive, like ripple effect that you see, you're feeding your children, but you're also fueling the economy, right? You're employing people, you're, getting kids to eat something that's fresh, but it's also supporting local agriculture.
Well, I also think, something as simple as sharing a meal with your friends
Yeah.
is such an emotional, it helps with your mental stability. It's good for the kids to learn to socialize together over a meal. I think that's like one of the most basic things we can do as humans to really connect.
And if you've never watched the child's decision-making process in the lunchtime, it takes one second grader to say, oh yeah, I've had sweet potatoes before, and then eight after gets sweet potatoes. So it's just this like ripple effect when one person takes the plunge and chooses that
Is the real life
item. It's who's the child influencer?
Yes, before influencers were a thing. We had a guest on this podcast before, and he said sitting with somebody like you're saying, Michael, to share a meal, it was social media before social media, right? It's where you got everybody together and you got talking and you became social. So I think we can never underestimate the power of the meal and bringing together. And the fact that our students can have access to that our schools can't be that vehicle for that interaction, and that the education, I think, among a lot of the myths that we talk about is education happens in the classroom. And I think it goes way beyond that. When you're talking about, working with your farmers and teaching the kids how, the food's made, prepared on site or whatever, or where it came from. Like a lot of the schools, I don't know if yours have, but they have school gardens. Of course, they're not going to feed 1,000 kids. Right. We get that. But, the fact that they can go outside and see how a tomato's grown, that can be life-changing.
Oh, yeah. We used to have a school garden at my previous district, and we would make pickles. We would get their cucumbers, and I would teach them how to make pickles, and we would do a whole thing. And they loved it. And that was something that was like a huge, like, learning opportunity for them. And I agree. I think the cafeteria is an extension of the classroom always.
I think one of the best things is when you serve chicken with bones in it. And the kids look at it and they're like, what's this? And it's like, this is the way it comes, actually. It doesn't come boneless with breading on it. That's not real. This is real. And we're an extension of the education that happens in the school, and a very important one, actually.
Yeah, I think we talked a lot about the good things here, but it's a lot of things that parents don't know. Like we talked about the choice between packing or buying. And it doesn't have to be one or the other.
Right.
And so maybe what are the things that parents can do? Like, every once I'm thinking of this ritual. My husband sits with my kid and goes through the menu. And, what is that? What are other ways that parents can be involved and help guide their kids and their decision making?
I think a lot of schools, we do, I'm sure you do, have menus online with pictures of what's there. So that's a great way to go when you're going through the menu, actually looking at the pictures and talking about what they see. Those pictures, believe it or not, 9 times out of 10 are the food that will be served in the schools. So I think that's a great way. And then visits, go have lunch with, we love it when parents come in because they're blown away by what they see. They're like, wow, I had no idea. I think it's the best thing you can do.
And I always encourage parents, whether you're packing from home or they're eating lunch at school, to ask their kids questions, and not just what you eat for lunch today. Is what was your favorite thing at lunch? What did you not like? What would you have changed? Asking more specific questions so that you don't just get I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I'm like, how do you not remember what you ate for lunch?
Yeah.
But so that could be really valuable information too.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no better compliment that we get when we post something about one of the things we served at lunch today, and then you'll get parents commenting, my daughter came home and couldn't believe how good this was, and she absolutely loved it. It was her favorite. I mean, that is great advertising for our program.
And if the parent would have made it,
They did.
exactly. So parents should really leverage that. If in a different form, and school lunch is a different way to introduce new food. So
It is the largest restaurant operation in town.
Absolutely.
We'll talk about that, right? Well, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you for being here, Alex, Nicole, and Michael. I learned so much when I'm here talking with you, and I'm always amazed at the wonderful work that you do. So thank you. So for the next episode, I'm gonna tee up fresh, local, scratch cooked. Next, we're looking at what fresh really means when it comes to school meals.